Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, fellow scoundrels, and welcome to Great Shot Kid on the Nerd Party Network, the podcast that's examining the works of Star Wars creators, whether they're behind or in front of the camera. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Mike.
And this week, we're going to be doing something pretty special for you. We're going to be conducting an imaginary film festival where we're going to do double features with the original Star Wars trilogy. Just the original three that were released in 77, 80, and 83. But before we do that, Mike, it turns out that we did get email over at thenerdparty.com/contact over to Great Shot Kid. Yeah. So it's always great to hear from people. And this listener's name is Jeff. And he posited an interesting question because on our show talking about Rogue One, we kind of hit on what I guess has been something that's been a point of contention for a lot of fans, which is the callbacks that were woven in there. And we have, we had opinions on them. Like we lived with them, but, some of them I was cool on, some of them you were cool on. And like, I don't think we lined up perfectly, but we had sort of the same feel about it. And so basically, to boil it down, Jeff's question was, why is it that that exists? Like he portrays himself, he says, point blank, he loves all of Star Wars and he's not going to talk bad about it. There might be minor issues, but whatever. He doesn't understand why fans sort of like pick on those sorts of things, why they might focus on them. And so I'm going to give the floor to you first to, what type of response you might have for Jeff.
Well, I think that, the callbacks can be done in one of two ways. One, you can kind of like build on the mythology which has been established and use certain elements in order to enhance your story. For example, one which completely went over my head until someone pointed it out was the Hammerhead Corvettes,
Yeah.
which is from an episode of Rebels. And
yes.
I had no idea. I until someone like showed me that image from Rebels, like a still, and I'm like, oh, hey, I remember that episode, and like that type of thing is really cool, But there's other things like the Walrus Man thing, where it feels like it's just sort of a wink and a nod to the audience. The R2D2 and C3PO thing, similarly, it feels gratuitous. It feels like it doesn't need to be there, and it feels like the only reason why it's there is to give the audience something to kind of say, hey, look at what they did there, I don't know. Yeah. There's something which, it's... I guess we hold Star Wars to a much higher standard. I remember at one point talking with my friend Max about A New Hope, and he was saying that the one scene in the movie which he dislikes is the gun turret scene. And the reason why he dislikes that scene is because it's the one scene in the movie which does not advance the plot. It's the one scene in the entire movie where you could remove it and it wouldn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I see what Max is saying, but I disagree with him about the necessity of it because I think that it's just it accentuates the idea of Vader and Tarkin having sold the rebels on the idea that they had a difficult escape. Like
I guess so, but they didn't even really do so you're saying from like Vader's and Tarkin's perspective,
right?
Like
if they just flew away, it speaks to Princess Leia's point of that was too easy. And Han says, easy, you call that easy? Leia's the one that sees through it, and she's like, that was a token defense. We got through that easily enough.
I guess.
And Han is the one saying, no, we just fought for our lives right now. Like, it sells everybody but Leia on the idea that they shook their pursuers.
I guess I see what you're saying. I guess what the reason why I bring that up is because, anytime you have a scene in a prequel movie, for example, with R2D2 and C3PO just saying like, they're going to where? How come no one tells us anything? And it's like in the context of the movie, that means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't need to be there then. Let's get rid of it. And the movie itself will be better. And I mean, the other thing with the Walrus Man, situation, which I brought up privately amongst other members of the network today, is that it destroys
Yes.
my headcanon
Mhm.
for
Oh,
Walrus Man's origin, which is the Robot Chicken sketch.
yes.
If you haven't seen it, just type in,
Yeah. Robot
Robot
Chicken,
Chicken,
Walrus
Walrus
Man.
Man. It'll come right up. It is, to me,
Yeah.
the definitive origin of Walrus Man, and I don't know why you would want to contradict that at all.
Well, for me, the winks and nods are for me. It's if it infringes on the self awareness. Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba being there, that's too self aware for me. 3PO and R2 kind of skirts that line, so I can kind of be like, okay, I get what you're doing. And I can actually, and I was originally not embracing Red Leader and Gold Leader being there, but then when I saw it again, and I was like, no, they actually fluidly worked them in to these are just characters in a battle.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, it makes perfect sense what's going on right here.
Yeah, they would be there.
Right.
That type of thing I like a lot.
Right. And so I admit that my initial emotional reaction was a little bit hypersensitive to their presence.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the thing is, it's just, I'm sort of consistently like that. Like it's even one of those things where I made peace with, but I'm not totally nuts about Chewie's Tarzan yell in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Right. Because that takes me out of the moment, because that's like somebody stopping the film and saying, hey, you remember Tarzan?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, shut up. I just want to watch what's going on. So, for me, it's just when they infringe on self-awareness is where I really, and that's why, like with Force Awakens, I still hit on the hollow chest scene.
Yeah.
If it had been one shot, I wouldn't have cared. But the fact that they went back to it for a second shot and then like panned up, I was like, oh, okay. We know it's there.
Now they do a callback to the hollow chest scene in Rogue One, which I think is really, really good. Because
that's a brilliant
does
callback.
Add things to it. It's, you see people playing hollow chess, but it's not hollow. It's just chess. They're playing
Right.
with like actual physical pieces, and not only is that a nice little like, hey, they're playing that game, but it also, in that particular scene, speaks to the culture which they're in at that point in
Right.
time. The fact that these are not people who have fancy, holographic games. They have things which are made out of wood,
Right.
and they're playing the same games that, Han Solo and Chewbacca play on the Falcon, but, with less money, So
Yep.
I thought that was like a really good callback, which really added to the scene and to the movie.
Agree.
So
Agree.
I mean, to me, there's a way to do it. It's like when you do it like that, it works well. When you do it like Walrus Man, it's cheap and it's easy and it's not effective to me. It takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I know Walrus Man, and I'm okay with him not being in every incarnation of Star Wars.
Well, for me, I instantly, and I'm not the only one. There are other people who have hung up on the fact of like, wait a minute, why were they in Jeddah? They're going to be on Tatooine immediately. Yeah, that doesn't make any. And so it's there's that whole thing. But Jeff, thank you very much for your email. Thank you very much for listening. We do appreciate you listening. We appreciate you interacting with the show. And again, if anybody wants to reach out to us, thenerdparty.com/contact. Look up Great Shot Kid. We get the emails when you send them in. So thanks again, Jeff, and keep the questions coming, everybody.
Yeah,
so,
thank you very much.
Now that we've answered Jeff's question, let's get into the meat of the show this week. And again, we are putting ourselves in the position of we're running I'm going to say a 3-day film festival, because I'm not watching myself 6 movies in a row, because that's difficult. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah.
So we're doing a 3-day film festival. Let's say we're putting on like a fundraiser or something, and we have day 1, day 2, day 3. And the only requisite here is that we're doing double features, pairing up things with Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. The order we show things, what we pair them with, it's all Mike and me. We have not collaborated before this. This is us just throwing this out there.
Yeah,
So
but
Mike,
it's going to be like A New Hope in some movie the first night,
Right.
Empire in some movie the second night, and
Yes.
Jedi in some movie the third night.
I'm
Yes.
glad you said A New Hope, because that's going to be the first thing I throw at you. At your
Okay.
festival, are you going to... Now, this is pie in the sky. This is, cloud talking type of festival. Are you showing special editions? Are you showing original versions of the original trilogy?
My festival is like the theater in Inglorious Bastards, where we respect the filmmaker.
Gotcha.
And because of that, we're going to be showing the director preferred versions of each movies, which means the special edition of A New Hope, the special edition of The Empire Strikes Back, unless we can get our hands on that new 4K master, which they have apparently up at Lucasfilm Skywalker Ranch, and the theatrical cut of Return of the Jedi.
Yes. Okay. So I'm in agreement with you here. As much fun as it would be to show Star Wars without even the episode 4 in front of it, just to mess with people,
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I'm going to show Lucas's preferred version of the original Star Wars. Okay, so let's kick it off. Day one, what are you showing? What's your lineup?
Okay, for this one, it's going to be A New Hope first. And the second half of the double feature is going to be The Matrix by the Wachowskis.
You're kidding me.
Is that what
That
yours
is exactly what I have written down.
Yeah, high five.
High five.
All right.
What was your reasoning?
My reasoning is that the thing that makes Star Wars special is the fact that it broke new ground. It was something which no one had ever seen before, and that's the reason why it, was such a big hit, and that's the reason why people are still talking about it today. That's the reason why, it's like in the top 10 or whatever it is on the AFI list and everything like that. And obviously, it was extremely influential. I would say it's not at all a stretch to say that it is the absolute most influential movie of the past 40 years on,
Agree.
young filmmakers. And this has manifested itself in different ways. You see a lot of people who are making cheap ripoffs of Star Wars. Obviously, that was kind of the first thing that happened out of the gate. Now you've got a very unique situation where filmmakers who grew up watching Star Wars are getting to make their own Star Wars movies, which is all well and good. But I feel that if you were to ask Lucas what he would want, how he would want his influence on the next generation of filmmakers to manifest itself, it would be for those filmmakers to do what he did and create their own new, unique visions and mythologies, and not try to mimic what he did, stylistically or in terms of storytelling, not try to add to what he established, in his universe, but to create the next Star Wars, the next thing that, 40 years from now, filmmakers are going to be, trying to mimic because it's the most influential thing to them.
Yep.
To me, the absolute best example of that is The Matrix.
I agree. I agree with all of your reasoning, and I reasoned it out the same way that when the Matrix came out, it was sort of like Star Wars. The technology for the bullet time existed. We'd seen it in Gap commercials before, used it on a much smaller scale.
Directed by McGee, by the way.
Well, I never knew that.
Yeah.
There you go. But and Star Wars did the same thing. It used technology that existed, but it applied it in a different and new way to help create this vision. And so that is what, speaks to me about the Matrix. And just like Star Wars, it burst onto the scene. Nobody saw it coming. I remember seeing the previews for it and saying, Keanu Reeves? Okay, maybe I'll go see it. And then a friend of mine saw it and came out of the theater, and I saw him that night, and he said, you have to go see The Matrix, right now. And I remember I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I got in there and I watched it. And I remember coming out of the theater and thinking, what just happened?
Yeah.
That is crazy. And it just, and it was a visionary thing. Now, just to keep it interesting, I will say that the film that almost unseated The Matrix for me to pair up with Star Wars, and this would be a very strange one left field, but Blade Runner, showing how world building on a dystopic scale can be done very effectively. Again, with technology that exists and everything, but just an engrossing story that carries you along. And of course, if we're going to respect directors' intent, we would have to go with the fifth version that they released on.
Yeah, the final cut, whatever that is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we'd have to respect that version. But that got swept aside, and I agree with you. The Matrix makes the most sense. And I would show A New Hope first and Matrix next.
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
All right, so
all
right. Let's see let's try to mix it up here. Day 2, where are you coming with it?
All right, let's see if we're 2 for 2 on this one.
I doubt
Okay, I would start with Empire, and the second film on the bill would be Richard Linklater's Before Sunset.
Interesting. Okay, that is not my choice because I haven't seen Before Sunset.
Oh,
that wouldn't have entered contention for me.
Have you seen Before Sunrise?
I have not seen any of the Before trilogy, and fellow Nerd Party host Sean Eastridge gives me no end of grief about it. It's sort of like the way you ribbed me about certain movies. He's like, I can't believe you didn't watch Before. I'm like, wow, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Why does it pair up? Tell me why.
Well, Before Sunset is the sequel. It's the second film. For those people who aren't aware what this trilogy is, it's directed by Richard Linklater, starring Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke. And the premise is the first movie, Before Sunrise. It was made in 1995, and it is about these two people. An American guy played by Ethan Hawke and a French woman played by Julie Delpy, who meet on a train, and they, Ethan Hawke's gonna go back home to America, but his flight doesn't leave until the morning, and Julie Delpy is just on a train back to France, back home to France, and she doesn't really have any plans, so Ethan Hawke has this crazy idea, and he says, hey, why don't you get off the train with me, and we can just, bum around the city for the night, and then in the morning you can get back on the train and go home, and then I will, fly off to America, and then, that'll be it. And, of course, over the evening they fall in love, and the whole time, they're aware of the fact that they aren't going to be seeing each other ever again, in a matter of hours, right? So Before Sunset was made 9 years later, 2004, where they meet again. And I won't say what happens there because of what I don't want to ruin the first one and any of that stuff, but they meet again, and they have now this time, just a few hours before, they have to part ways. And it is amazing. It's an amazing movie. The entire trilogy is pretty great. But Before Sunset, in a lot of ways, is like The Empire Strikes Back. I firmly believe that nobody would really care about Star Wars today the way that they do. I mean, everyone would still think it was a good movie. I'm sure there'd be a million sequels, probably a lot more sequels, honestly. But they'd all be like, crap in a sense, just like that thing, like, oh, there's another Star Wars movie coming out. How many of those have they made? Kind of like
right.
James Bond movies or something. And some of them will be good, some of them will be bad, and at one point they've been rebooted or whatever. I firmly believe all of that would happen if Empire was not as good as it was. Empire is the only reason why anybody really cares about this franchise, because it takes it to another level.
Yeah, well, and if I can jump in there, because I'm sure that there's at least one person's, brain suffering an aneurysm at that statement. If I'm reading you correctly, Star Wars would still be acknowledged as a masterwork and impactful and game-changing and all of that stuff, but it would be regarded in the same sense without Empire Strikes Back as Citizen Kane.
Yeah, I mean,
where it would be like, that is fantastic, but look at where we've come since then, as opposed to still regarding it as a vibrant and current work.
Yeah, nobody talks about Jaws 2, right? I haven't even seen Jaws 2, and yet everyone is still in full agreement that Jaws is a masterpiece, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of like how people would see it, and then there would have been Star Wars 3D and Star Wars The Revenge and, whatever. And then it would have petered
I want
out.
to envision them more like Rocky. Like
Rocky,
Luke just
yeah.
keeps having the same fight over and over and over again. You just change some of the circumstances.
Yeah, yeah, you could do that. It's I mean, I really do think that that's kind of how it would be. It would probably be more like the EU is actually than what the saga movies are. But there would be no EU. Nobody would care. There'd be a few books that came out, and
Right.
some comics, but it's not like there'd be, this thing there would not be this podcast,
Right.
And Before Sunset, in a lot of ways, I feel the same way about. Before Sunrise is a great movie, and you walk out of that movie and you're like, wow, it's mind blowing how good it is. But it's just a movie. When
Yeah.
you have Before Sunset, it becomes something much, much larger than any single movie itself could be. It becomes a thing about people, about I mean, when I say people, I mean the people who are watching the movie. It becomes a thing about time and how we change over the years and what happened in that decade and how, I mean, all of this stuff,
Yeah.
and it enhances the first one so much. And yeah, I feel like Empire does the same thing, and I think that would be a fantastic double feature. Any excuse to watch Before Sunset again is a good one, and I think this is a pretty good excuse.
Well, and I appreciate you. You really painted a picture of why I should see the Before trilogy, and you didn't give anything away, which I appreciate because now I'm even more motivated to see it. Because honestly, you'd pair this with Empire. Now I got to see these things so that I can say I can fully understand, where you're coming from. So thank you for the homework. I appreciate that.
And for those people, it comes out on Criterion, the whole trilogy, February 28th, I believe. So check it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
For me, when we get to Empire, I actually went back and forth on this a lot because, second one in the franchise, building on the first one. So certain things like, Aliens enters the brain. Godfather Part 2 enters the brain. But what I wound up settling on, and I need your help because I'm not sure which one I would show first. But the one I would pair with The Empire Strikes Back, and let me give you the reason before we figure out what goes first, is Michael Mann's The Last of the Mohicans. For the express purpose that it is a tremendous work. Both of them are arguably the best thing that either director has ever done. And this is coming from a Michael Mann fan. I love Manhunter. I love Collateral, all of those sorts of things. But The Last of the Mohicans is his masterpiece. He nailed it on every front. And The Empire Strikes Back, even though, yes, everybody knows Revenge of the Sith is my favorite of the series and everything, that doesn't mean I take anything away from Empire. Empire is a wonderful, fantastic thing. And I think the reason I ultimately pair them is because they both end in a melancholy way, with the heroes having taken some serious lumps, losses along the way, questions about identity and how do you carry forward, but still looking out on the horizon and saying, we took our hits, we've had our losses, but we're not giving up. We're going to keep pushing forward because that's what life is. And I think that, for me, is what makes them pair well together. So help me out. Which one should go first?
Well, I don't really think that I'm qualified to answer that question because I've never seen Last of the Mohicans.
Come on.
Hey, you've never
You
seen
haven't
Before
seen-
Sunset, so you know what?
Oh, you know what? The Last of the Mohicans. Oh, okay. All right.
I'm a big Michael
I hope
Mann
I didn't just
fan.
blow it for you.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't know anything about the plot, so it's
Okay.
It's all good.
And there is a third version, a director's definitive edition.
Yeah.
There was a theatrical cut, and then there was a DVD cut, which was just sloppily done. And then they have the director's definitive edition.
Well, I'll be sure to check out the director's definitive edition because I am a fan of Michael Mann. Obviously I've heard good things about Last of the Mohicans, and yeah, I mean, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say for now what I would settle on is I would have Last of the Mohicans first, actually, in this viewing order,
Okay.
and then go into Empire. And I think because I feel that I've been leading a crusade for many years, ever since Kevin Smith painted the idea that Empire is the best one because it ends on a down note. To say that, and the thing is, I have friends. I remember the conversation years ago. I was having a conversation with my friend Cecilia, and I said Empire Strikes Back ends on a hopeful note, and she just about lost her mind and said I was nuts. I was out of my mind. And so I actually went to the trouble of writing like this long form blog piece arguing my point, and I totally believe it. And so I would put Last of the Mohicans first, so that when somebody goes into their viewing of Empire, they see what I see about the ending. So
I say that. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. And I'm not sure that Kevin Smith would disagree with you either. I think a lot of times, a lot of those conversations, he's writing for the characters, and not
Oh, sure, but
necessarily
Clerks did damage, man. Clerks did lasting damage.
I don't know about that,
No, it's a good movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying that Empire Jedi conversation in Clerks colored the conversation about Star Wars for years afterward.
What I love about that, there's the whole thing about the contractors, on the
Yeah.
Death Star and everything like that. And someone in an interview, like a few years later, actually asked Lucas about it, and he explained how it all worked.
I
Which
love
I thought
that,
was
man.
pretty interesting. But then he also brings it up on the episode 2 commentary, I believe.
Yeah, he said there were a lot of delays and, problems with labor and, equipment holdups and stuff like that.
But he actually brings up Clerks because he says,
Oh, really?
like,
I don't
so
remember that.
he says something like, he gets it wrong. He says, like, so it's not exactly how it went down in that conversation between Jay and Silent Bob, which,
Right. It's
Silent
not,
Bob doesn't
yeah.
talk, dude. So
Something. He's a busy man and he's making masterworks. And
I mean, the
he,
fact that he saw it is pretty crazy. I get the impression that Lucas. I mean, as growing up, he's seen like a million movies, but like since like Star Wars, he's seen like 3 things. And I know that that's completely wrong.
Yeah,
but I think
no
it's
way.
just because he's such a like he's almost this godlike figure. So the idea that he's going to be like, I'm going to watch Clerks. I mean, that's just so weird to me. And anytime he says something like, I saw Pulp Fiction. Like he said that once. I saw an interview. He's like, I saw Pulp Fiction. I'm like, really? George Lucas saw Pulp Fiction? That's so weird. I mean, like there was a thing like when The Rock came out, they had like a thing on like Access Hollywood on like the red carpet, and they showed like George Lucas going into the movie. I'm like, he's going to see The Rock? I'm going to see The Rock. That's so cool. And the other 2 things which he's talked about, which I think are, one of them they both make a lot of sense, but one thing he says that he's like a huge fan of the show Rome.
I was a fan of the first season.
Okay.
The second season sort of lost me.
He was complaining that they like canceled it right when it was going to get really interesting, and then he like went on this like rant about how awesome Rome is. And then the other thing which he said that he watches on a regular basis is the Speed Channel, the auto racing channel.
Really?
Which
okay,
makes
I
sense.
can see that.
I mean, yeah. Although at the time I'm like, wow, they don't even have that in HD. How does he deal with that? That's terrible. But regardless,
Knowing Lucas, he developed some technology that upscales it to like,
Yep.
4K or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. Yes.
All right. Well, okay. So now we're at day 3. Everybody has, bated breath. Just like going into the theater in 1983, everybody has high expectations. What are we doing with them? What are you doing for day 3?
I'm going to start with the alternate movie first, and that is Casablanca. And the
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Casablanca, and the reason for that is because Casablanca is one of very few movies, relatively speaking, which is considered to be a masterpiece, despite the fact that it was not a singular vision. It was a studio film which had a lot of hired hands writing the script. It had a director who was under contract at the studio directing it, who was assigned to the movie along with all the actors and everything like that. It is the crowning achievement of the studio system in a lot of ways. It's a bunch of people who were put together in sort of a factory style production and turned out one of the best movies ever made. And that's a style which I think Return of the Jedi kind of used in terms of its production. I think that that's the style that Lucas would prefer to operate under. It's very similar to like a television style, where he had an idea, he had a vision, but he hired other people to carry that out, and
Yeah.
it wasn't like a case of like Kirshner, where Kirshner is a strong personality and has a very clear idea of the type of movie that he wants to make. Not that Marquand didn't, but Marquand, I think, knew what it was that Lucas wanted out of him, and what it was that Lucas wanted to do himself. And all of the pieces came together to make what I also think is a masterpiece in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So that would be my pairing: Casablanca and then Return of the Jedi.
Okay. No, I think that's a great pairing. I do. And it's especially nice because, there are so many echoes in Lucas's work to the stuff from that era that he watched growing up. So completely valid, and dig that choice. I went in a slightly different direction. The little scamp in me at one point entertained the idea of using Star Trek II paired up with Return of the Jedi, just because of the whole Vengeance of Khan, Revenge of the Jedi conflict, and just give everybody a quick chuckle. And also, hey, watching Star Trek II is not a bad way to spend part of your day.
Yeah.
But where I wound up going, and I'll explain my thinking with this, was, and I think the thinking is somewhat similar to where you got with Casablanca, but in a slightly different way, which is Guardians of the Galaxy. Because there's very obviously a Star Wars residual influence on it. And I think that the two movies paired together is that I think that Guardians is a movie that its primary concern is that the audience has a good time and leaves the theater happy with a skip in their step, and the heroes win, and everything's cool, and there's you check off all of the marks, and you have the hero finding out something about himself. And I think that Return of the Jedi hits those same marks. And Lucas said when they were making it, the whole point of this is for people to walk out of here feeling happy. The whole purpose of Return of the Jedi was he wanted people walking out of there pumping their fist in the air, saying, yeah, all right, what a ride. This was fantastic. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy has the same express intent. And so you can sort of see how Return of the Jedi is studio system. Guardians of the Galaxy is studio system. I mean, they brought in James Gunn, but he had his constraints put on him.
Yeah.
Now, he had a freer hand than Marquand did, inarguably. But I think that they are peas in a pod in their ultimate goal.
Yeah, and there is something to be said for Guardians of the Galaxy sort of falling into that Matrix territory as well. I saw a thing recently with James Gunn talking about, how he was making the movie and the aesthetic of the movie, and there was someone who was saying like, oh man, how come you're not using film? Film is where it's at, that's all the great blockbusters of, your childhood were shot on film and everything. And he said something to the effect of, I don't want to mimic the style of the things that I loved growing up. I want to give the next generation, a new style that they will love growing up. I don't want to rely on nostalgia. I want to be the next thing. And I think that he really does take that approach to making that movie or those movies. So I could definitely see that being a good pairing with Jedi. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have given you, the listeners, our film festival selections, and we would legitimately want to hear yours. So Again, thenerdparty.com/contact. You can reach out to us there. Reach out to us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party. You can reach the whole network through that Twitter handle. You can go to Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdparty. Reach us there. Mike, where can they reach you on the internet?
Well, you can find me on Trek FM doing From There to Here, which is our daily rewatch show. We've only got 1 week left.
Only one left.
But it's exciting, so check that out, where we watch 2 episodes of Star Trek a day. And you can also find me over on commentarytrackstars.com. If you go there tomorrow, you will find our annual Christmas commentary, where me and my co-host Max will be providing a commentary for a movie, which will be a surprise. But check back tomorrow,
wait.
And yeah, you'll see what that is. And then also you can find me this past week, the most recent episode of Filibuster I'm on, talking to Marcelo from the Talk Film Society about La La Land, which, spoilers, is the best movie of the year. And finally, you can find me over on Trek.fm again, doing Stage 9, where we talk about the people who make Star Trek, along with John Mills. Where can people find you, John?
Well, aside from annoying you on another venue called Stage 9 on Trek FM, you can also find me co-hosting here on the Nerd Party Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. You can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig. And, then you can look for Kessel Junkie online, your social network of choice, and that's where I'll be. And while you're searching for us online, be sure to stop by lootcrate.com and go to lootcrate.com/nerdparty, enter the code NERDPARTY, and you'll get a discount on your subscription to Loot Crate, which is a service that sends you a box of goodies in different geek themes once a month. It's a pretty neat thing, and it's a pretty good discount, too. So lootcrate.com/nerdparty and use the code NERDPARTY. So until next time, we look forward to hearing what your film festival selections will be. And get ready. We're going to be revisiting a Joe Johnston classic, Rocketeer.